Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the mentor orientation for the Intro to Programming class that starts on May 25th. Our Intro to Programming class this round is going to be interesting. We're trying to accept more students into it. So 63 student offers have gone out, and we also have 24 people on the wait list. If we're able to get enough mentorship, then we'll bring on as many as we can. The sum total of students that accept the offer for a seat in the class, we're going to divvy them out into two different groups. That'll be 50-50 split, hopefully. One class will be using the standard curriculum we've been using before, the Team Treehouse content. And the other class will be using Odin Project that we've kind of cut and pasted into the order we want them to learn things in. So we'll go over more details about that going forward, but I just wanted to make you all aware that it's one cohort, but two technically different classes because they're using different lesson material content. So I just wanted to share that up front. And speaking of sharing, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, some of this will be a little redundant for those of you that were in our volunteer interest meeting last night because we go over sort of what our organization is in case you haven't already been exposed to this information, would like to know a little bit more about us. But I'll try and glaze through it a little bit quicker tonight since a lot of you probably just saw this recently. In general, though, our agenda for the meeting tonight, get to know each other. Feel free to post if you haven't already, name, pronouns, location, and tech stack, or where you work, or any other information like that that you'd like to share in the chat to get to know each other. I'll go over information about our organization, talk about the class just in general to kind of give you a general overview about the class and how it all works. And then we'll take a little brief break. And then when we come back from our break, we'll dig in more specifically to what a mentoring session or what the mentoring experience looks like, go over any kind of helpful tips, resources, next steps, all of that good stuff. Reed is on the call with me tonight as well. He is our programs associate, and he will also be a great point person for you all to reach out to if there's anything that you need. So feel free to contact either of us if you have questions or need things outside of this meeting. And if you have questions during, then feel free to throw it up in the chat, or we will also cover things at the end in our question and answer section. All right, so that's the information to share in the chat if you haven't already. Name, pronouns, location, kind of work that you do, anything else that you'd like to share. So, Code the Dream. Our mission is to create opportunities that change lives, build technology that benefit our communities, and support diversity that drives a more just and innovative world. So it's a really big mission, and it's one that we take very seriously. And we do that on the school side, specifically through having low-income and diverse background students that we bring in for these free classes in order to be able to create these opportunities for our students. Because they're coming from diverse populations, then we're helping support that diversity that drives innovation. And then as they work their way through our classes, they have the opportunity to apply at the end for our apprenticeship program, which brings them into our dev shop side, CTD labs, where they'll be building technology that benefit our community. We're very selective about the types of projects that we work on the lab side, and all of them have a very strong sort of social justice focus, or ways that they can kind of better support communities or better support underrepresented demographics and organizations. So we carry out the model through the school and the lab side. The school side is the free intensive classes in web development for students to be able to take. And then the lab side is real world experience through paid apprenticeship for those students, as well as building lower cost items for our clients, because we have students that are working as apprentices on these programs. So it's kind of an interesting model. If you want any more information about our organization, then you can always visit codethedream.org. And we have information on there, specifically on the portfolio page, that shows you sort of what the lab side is building in case you're curious at all. Okay, so let's talk about the class path. Students are able to apply and enter in either to the intro class level, which is the beginner's level, or they can apply and enter in at an advanced level. So all of the students that you'll be working with in the intro classes, we're hoping to give them a nice, good, solid foundation in JavaScript basics and fundamentals, HTML, CSS, and introduce them to the concept of API fetch. They do build a very, very small API fetch that works with their GitHub account to be able to pull their repos into their portfolio page, which is the project that they build throughout the course. And that way it gives them kind of a good framework and a good basis for them to be able to move on to an advanced class in either React, Node.js Express, or Ruby on Rails are the three advanced tech areas and frameworks that we offer currently. The intro class is 16 weeks. At the end of it, they should have a completed portfolio that they can then use if they're doing any kind of job application process, if they're trying to get into any kind of maybe entry-level design stuff before learning about the more advanced things in development. The advanced classes dig deep into those particular types of frameworks and languages to be able to get them comfortable working in those and prepare them for entry-level work once they're done with the advanced class and the practicum, which gives them team development experience. Throughout all of the classes, we offer some professional and personal growth. So the mindset curriculum is just a short reading and a series of prompts that students will look over and answer to be able to kind of get them thinking about what it means to be a programmer and to think like a programmer, as far as like, where do you turn for help? How do you problem solve? What happens if you hit a wall? You know, how to approach that. So there's a lot of sort of evergreen programmer skills that are sewn throughout that mindset curriculum that runs alongside their actual development content that they're learning from week to week. We also occasionally have skillets, which are short 1 hour tech specific or tech related topics that we present on Friday afternoons that are occasionally appropriate for students. And so they're invited into those. Typically the skillets are for the apprentices and the staff for the Code the Dream Lab side. But like this Friday, we've got one where some of the experienced developers that have either gone through our program or have volunteered with us can share their stories about what it was like for getting into the tech industry. So things like that, we usually invite students in on as well. So at the end of the advanced classes, then they have the opportunity to apply for the CTD Labs apprenticeship, and it's a small percentage that's accepted. Usually we take about 25 to 30 students into one advanced class, and it winds up being about like 2 to 4 students out of each advanced class that we can bring in as an apprentice. And of course, it all depends on, you know, what we've got going as active projects on the dev shop, when some of our apprentices are leaving us and graduating to other jobs in the tech industry, if we're signing on new clients or projects that we need more help on, that kind of a thing. It all depends on whether or not we can take on more or less of our usual average. But the end goal for all of our students is that they'll be able to land a position in a software developer job once they're done with an advanced class and a practicum experience, and that should get them ready for an entry level or intern position. Any questions so far just about sort of the program and the class setup as far as how it runs intro into advanced? They do a group practicum at the end of the advanced, and then they can apply for apprenticeship, or they can take additional advanced classes if they want to. Okay, cool. I'll keep on rolling then, but feel free to fire any questions into the chat if you have any, or unmute and interrupt me too. I am not offended if you do that. Okay. Class profile. So the 63 students that we offered positions to, we're still in the process of getting their acceptance forms turned in, but we've got about 2/3 of them roughly that have already accepted their seat. And then we've got 24 on wait list. So depending on how many more folks we hear back from, we might be able to start moving some of those waitlist people into the class. So these figures might change a little bit, but in general, the averages should be pretty close to what you're seeing here. So the population of students that you'll be working with, 73% are people of color, 60% are women or non-binary, and 92% are low income. So just keep in mind that they're coming from a very diverse background. Some folks might have some struggles that they're dealing with, either socioeconomic or just sort of societal issues that might be going on. So it's really important to keep an open mind and be very patient and be very open means of communication, rephrase things. A lot of our students are not English first language. So it helps to kind of rephrase questions or explain things in a couple of different ways to be able to help anybody that's struggling with the language as well as struggling with learning the concepts. The average age of students that you'll be working with is 30. Our youngest student offered was 18 and our oldest is 55. So it really spans a gamut. People are from very different walks of life and experience levels. So you just got to kind of be versatile as far as your approach to mentoring. And our current class, I think this is the largest number that we've had in recent years. All of our students are spread across 17 states in the US. We do have 3 students that it looks like they might be international students, but it was unclear from the way they filled out their form. Rixio, thank you. Yes. Yeah. If you are multilingual, speak Spanish, Russian, And then there are some Middle Eastern languages and dialects too that students speak. So if you are familiar and fluent in that language and you need or want to connect with students that also speak that language, we do ask students what languages they speak besides English. So I can always connect you with students if you're wanting to help people learn to code in their native language. Just make me aware if you are interested in getting that information. Questions about the student population so far? Good. Okay, we'll keep on rolling. All right, so let's talk about the curriculum. We break our curriculum out into this little acronym abbreviation called MASCOF. M is for materials, so lesson materials. It'll be the content that they're actually looking over that's teaching them the concepts. As Reed had mentioned in the volunteer interest meeting last night, we have sort of a flipped model. So students will be doing the majority of the learning on their own asynchronously. They're just working through this content as they can. And then when they come to the mentor sessions, they should be bringing any kind of questions that they have and go over that with experienced mentors so that way they can better grasp anything that they might have been struggling with as they were working through the material. So lesson materials, we use Treehouse for the Bestla Intro to Programming branch of our intro class. And then the Odin project is the one that we'll be using for the Borr. Those are Norse god terms in case you're curious. And so we kept Norse gods with the Odin project, which is Norse gods. And then Treehouse, Bestla is one of Saturn's moons. And we usually have the Treehouse intro classes named after stars or other celestial bodies. So that covers materials. And then of course their mindset curriculum prompt, which is the same across both classes. One thing I wanted to be clear about for lesson materials, even though one group will have Treehouse, one group will be covering Odin project, they're covering the same concepts in the same order. So if you are approached by a student that needs assistance, or if you reach out to a student that needs assistance that's not in a class that you're mentoring for, you should still be able to help them through that process, and they should be in line with what's being covered. It's just their lesson materials that they've been referencing will be different if you're focused on the Borr class and a Bestla student asks you a question. If they say, well, in the video, then you'll be like, what videos? The Odin project didn't have a video that I remember. It's because they're from the Treehouse class. Assignments, they have a coding assignment and then the mindset prompt response that they do each week. The first 5 weeks, their coding assignment is just in vanilla JavaScript basics. So the first assignment covers like write a variable, write a function, console log something, just very basic kind of concepts to cover what they were learning that week. And that happens for the first 5 weeks is JavaScript basics. And then starting right after that is when we introduce them to GitHub and Git. And then they start working solely in GitHub with their repo, building their portfolio from that week on to the end. The sessions, students are required to attend 2 sessions per week. They can be one-on-one or group sessions. And they'll be given the schedule as far as when you all are free and offering your mentor sessions, and then they sign up for what sessions work for their schedule. I'll send the mentor session schedule out to you all through Slack Saturday mornings. So that way, if you need to make changes to the upcoming week, you can. And then students have access to that on Mondays. And then our class week starts on Wednesdays. So you'll have a little bit of a gap between when we publish the schedule and when the schedule actually starts for that particular week. That kind of segues into the community. For the majority of our conversations that we hold and the way we communicate and contact students is through Slack. Primarily, that's the main point. There are some students that don't seem to be on it very often, so if I need to follow up with them, then I usually have to email them. But we typically do Slack support first. We try and let students help each other at first to kind of get the concept solidified, because sometimes explaining something to somebody else helps you learn it that much better. But of course, if you see questions up on Slack that students aren't sure of and other students aren't chiming in with, I think maybe this will work, then feel free to reach out to that student or post a response to their post that helps give them direction. And the final project is the last part of the curriculum. So from week 5 until the end, then they're working on building this portfolio project, which includes like links to their GitHub repo, a small little leave a message section so they can understand forms and how to handle form submits. And it just gives sort of like a resume view as far as experience and skills and that kind of information. And it gets them comfortable with HTML and CSS in that process as they build that final project as well. Questions about the curriculum at all? Yes, yeah. Rixie had asked about if you all will get access to Slack channel at some point. Usually, I go ahead and add you all into it after we're done with our mentor orientation. So be sure to be keeping an eye out on the email that you provided us with when you signed up as a mentor. And either tonight, tomorrow, definitely by the weekend, I'll have you all added into the Slack channels. And I'll go into more detail as far as like what the Slack channels are and how we use them also. Okay, so the topics that we cover, I touched on this a little bit when I was talking about lesson materials, but to be a little bit more specific, class curriculum for both of these classes is going to cover JavaScript variables, arrays, objects, loops, conditionals, functions, methods, DOM manipulation, AJAX, and API fetch. Nice long laundry list of some good foundationals there. In HTML, they'll cover like tags, attributes, elements, syntax, forms, those kind of common and useful things to know. And then CSS will be covering syntax, how to link it to an HTML file, basics, flex grid, media queries, all of those good things. So they should have a pretty good, well-rounded basis for the front end aspect, especially of development. Class tools, we have a lot of tools that we use. There are going to be different websites or sort of class dashboards, depending on which class you're mentoring, or which part of the class you're mentoring with. So mentors that'll be working with the Bestla team, then learn.codethedream.org, and then go to the Bestla page will be the primary one. I do not have the Bestla page published yet, but I will be having it done by this weekend. You can take a look at Orange Asteroid, which is currently on the learn.codethedream.org site, and it'll be exactly the same as far as content and layout and what all of that looks like and how to access all of the curriculum information. The only thing different will be the start and end dates of their class weeks. And then the Airtable interface is going to be for Borr. So it's a Airtable site that you go to be able to access the information that we have in our Airtable base that outlines things. As far as what their lesson materials are for the week, links to their coding assignment, information on their mindset prompts, and then like submit buttons. We're in the process of making sure that the Airtable interfaces is going to be a good format for us and a good setup and fairly user-friendly for our students, as well as checking to see if the Odin content is sufficient for our students or if it's a little too advanced for a lot of the folks that come in at the intro level. So that's why we're doing it this way as far as having the two different groups together. Mentor resources are available at learn.codethedream.org/mentor resources. That is a password protected site, which I'll be sharing the credentials for that for you in the slides and in the email and the follow-up recording and everything that I send out after our orientation tonight. Team Treehouse is going to be for the Bestla class. Odin project site is going to be for the Borr class. But again, we kind of are taking the Odin project foundations course and taking it out of order because we prefer that they see and work with JavaScript first rather than getting too heavy into HTML and CSS and then not having enough time to really absorb and put their JavaScript concepts to work throughout the whole class. GitHub will be used from that, after week 5 point on. Squibby 2.0 is just a web form that is linked to our Airtable bases that students use to be able to send us their GitHub repo links or their Replit links for the first 5 weeks. And then they also have options to be able to let us know, like, this was a really difficult week for me, or I'm having issues because I'm moving and so I don't have reliable internet, so I might be late next week, or anything like that they can fill in on the Squibby 2.0 form. Slack channels for announcements and discussions, and then you all will have a private channel just between mentors and assignment reviewers. So that way, if you all need to confer about students or anything, then you can do that in a private channel away from student eyes. And then Zoom is what we use for you to be able to host your mentor sessions. It's one Zoom CTD account that'll be assigned for that class. So your mentor sessions can't overlap, unfortunately, or if you're doing a one-on-one, check to make sure there isn't a mentor session currently going on before you use that Zoom channel. But that will be provided, so that way you don't have to worry about using your own personal Zoom information or anything like that. And we already have it sort of set up so that way people can just hop on and hop off as they need to. If you need or want a host key to be able to like do, I think the whiteboard stuff is only available from a host perspective. Recording your session is also only available from a host perspective. So if you need to have host functionality in the Zoom, then just let me know and I can share the host key with you so that way you can do what you need to from a host user perspective in Zoom. We typically don't record our mentor sessions just because we don't know if all students are comfortable being recorded or not. So we typically don't have mentors recording their sessions. But if that's something that you want, or if your students are asking that you do that so they can refer back to what you're teaching later, then just let me know and I can help you out with that. The biggest part of the mentor session process is make sure that you're filling out a mentor session reporting form. That helps us keep track of attendance. So that way we know what students are attending which sessions. And if we have any questions about how a student's doing, then we can look back and say, oh, okay, these are the mentors that this person has been with. So we can contact you to get more information about how their progress is and if we need to help intervene to get them supplemental resources or anything. Airtable's our main use for a lot of our data information. So if there is anything that you need as far as student records, then just come to myself or Reed and we can get you information on like how many sessions they've attended, if they've submitted their work, when they submitted their work, any kind of data like that. Questions about the tools that we use at all? Good. Okay. All right, so mentor sessions are going to be a 1-to-5 ratio as far as we have one mentor for every 5 students. But for your session itself, you may have like 8 to 10 students that sign on. We try to keep them on the smaller side for the mentor sessions, just so that way students have an opportunity to be able to ask questions and get them answered, which is hard to do the larger number of students you have on a call. And that way, you're still keeping things, fairly tight as far as being able to address any kind of issues. Students are asked for their top 3 weekly availabilities in their class acceptance form. So once I have more of the students, closer to the full number of students, turn in their student acceptance form, then I'll be able to give you a breakdown like, oh, it looks like, half of the class needs Friday between noon and 9 p.m. so that you all can kind of tailor, if you're able to, when to have your mentor session that fits when students are looking to have their sessions held, or like when in their schedule they're available. It's fine if you can't make the most popular times. That's perfectly okay, because we always have outliers or people whose schedules are variable or things like that. So don't feel like you absolutely have to fit within those windows that I share as far as student availability. It's just sort of a guideline to kind of help you narrow down in case you're deciding what day of the week you want to host. Each mentor holds a minimum of 1 session a week. You can hold more if you want to. You can also do one-on-one tutoring outside of your mentor session if you feel like it or if you want to. Students are expected to attend 2 sessions a week, and they can either be a by appointment only or a mentor session that's a traditional scheduled time. So even if you're doing a by appointment only session with a student, be sure that you fill out a mentor session report form too. So that way we know that they have been working with somebody on the content. And during the mentor session, then basically you're just going to be reviewing concepts from the content for that week. A lot of time you'll review previous weeks too. Our lessons do tend to build on each other. So it could be that even though this week we're talking about objects, they still don't fully understand some of the array methods. So you might want to address that in your session as well, for example. You can review the assignment as well, so that way they get a clear understanding of what they're being asked to do in the assignment. The first 5 weeks especially tend to be a struggle for most of our students, because they can easily get confused as far as like, what is this asking me to build? And sometimes just the wording can be a little tricky for some folks as far as like, create a variable and assign this to it, name the variable such and such, since it's sort of out of order of how the actual code is written, then that can confuse some students as far as like, wait, so I name it after, or that kind of a thing. You run into things like that. Help with any questions or blockers that they're having when they're working on their code. And you can either do like a programming demo to kind of show them how to build out something, or show them examples of the things that you would build that are sort of parallel to what the assignment's covering. Or you can also do pair programming, kind of have folks working together to kind of work through what the assignment's like. and just be sure to fill out your mentor session report form when you're done. Questions about what the mentor session looks like? And we'll dig more deeply into mentor session specifics after a short little break here in another minute. Okay. All right. Well, then feel free to take a couple minute break because we're already half an hour in. So feel free to use the restroom or grab a drink or anything like that. I'm going to stop sharing and pause recording. Okay, and we are back from our break. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was a sample agenda for your mentoring session. Generally at the start, you'll take attendance. It's really helpful to go ahead and pull up your CTD mentor report, that mentor session report at the start of your mentor session. So that way you can just be adding names as people are signing into the Zoom call. So we usually recommend go ahead and have it open on another tab, and that way you can add attendance names in as needed. It's a very short form. It basically just covers attendance, and then if there are any notes that you want to put in about the session, like most of the students were 2 weeks behind, so we covered this concept instead, or got a lot of questions about question number 3. It was worded really weird. Most of the students didn't understand it. Things like that are examples of what you would also include on that mentor session report form. So after you take attendance and everybody's signed into your mentor session and ready to roll, then usually we recommend taking sort of a progress poll just to get a scale of where students are at. So our lesson weeks start on Wednesday. Students are provided with the lesson link on Wednesday, so that way they know what they're going to be working on through the week. And then their coding assignment and mindset assignment are due by the following Tuesday. So it's a little bit weird that it's not a Monday through Friday kind of a scenario, but it helps give our students a little bit more time in the middle of the week when to have that being over the weekend, so that they have more time in the middle of their work week, of their class work week, to be able to cover the content and everything and still have time before the homework's due on Tuesday to be able to get things addressed. So usually you can just like either poll them in the chat, or if you have people with cameras on and they want to just throw up a reaction or raise their hand or whatever to kind of give you an idea, that'll help you gauge, and it'll also help you pivot. So if most of the students are like, I haven't even started at all, I haven't touched the lesson materials or anything, then you can say, okay, well then let's review last week, or let's do a little bit of a preview and talk about what we are going to be learning this week. So you can kind of gauge what you're going to be doing based on where your students that are in your session are at. You'll want to be sure that you're reviewing main learning concepts and giving examples. The giving examples is a really big thing. A lot of our newer students that are in intro, the biggest struggle that they have and where they have the biggest difficulty is the concepts seem so foreign because they're programming, but if you can relate them to something that's more real world, then it helps make more sense. I remember when I was in one of my early classes with Code the Dream myself, I had a hard time understanding the whole like push pull and committing and staging and all of that. And Ramiro, our CTO, was teaching the class, and he was like, think of it kind of like, you place an order at a restaurant and the chef cooks it, and then they put it up for the waiter to be able to double check and make sure that it's what they need, and then the waiter takes it out to the table, kind of a thing. So giving real world examples like that aren't related to programming at all, but kind of align with what that overarching concept is, can be helpful for a lot of the students. Be sure to cover any questions that they have from the videos or the lesson material content. And then you can also do like a little bit of an assignment review. So if it's a Tuesday night session and most of them have their assignment done and they just aren't sure if they have everything right or not, then you can kind of look over it with them and have students sort of interact on each other's assignments to kind of chime in like, oh, I wrote that line of code differently, or I approached that from a different angle. I did a while instead of a for loop or whatever. Then those are all good concepts to be able to bring up to kind of help demonstrate that there's more than one way that you can do something, and why would you want to do one way over another, for example. You do sometimes get additional questions too, especially as it gets towards the end of the class, as far as like, how did you get into technology? What's a technical interview like? Things like that. So if all the students have their coding questions answered and they want to chat a little bit about what it's like to work in the industry, then you're welcome to share that information with them. And then just make sure that you send off your mentor session report so that way we get the attendance count and have any other details that we need on the assignment. Questions about the sample agenda as far as like what your hour would look like? Good. Okay, we'll keep on going. So the other thing I like to cover are common issues as far as, things that might throw a wrench in your plan of what you're picturing your mentor session is going to be like. Sometimes it can be trouble focusing students, like if they're a particularly chatty group or they're really getting along well and they're talking about things that are unrelated to the class or unrelated, then you can kind of just bring them back. You don't run into that too often, or at least I haven't heard of that being a terribly large issue among our mentors and students. Because most of them, it's like, look, I only have this much hours in my week that I can work on things that I want to learn to better my situation. So I'm really going to stay focused. But if you need to sort of rap on your desk, so to speak, to get everybody's attention, then bringing them back is always a good thing to do. So your mentoring session, if you're having it on a Wednesday or Thursday versus a Monday or Tuesday, because our weeks start on Wednesday and they have to turn in their assignments by Tuesday, then your sessions might look a little bit different because Wednesday, Thursday, a lot of your students will not have yet gotten into the lesson materials. They might not have even remotely looked at what their coding assignment is because they haven't covered their lesson materials yet. And then Monday, Tuesday, you're going to be looking at folks that likely will be through the majority of the assignment and lesson materials for the week, and will have a ton of questions about, I ran into this issue, or I don't understand this concept, or things of that nature. So just keep in mind that if you're mentoring on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then you might have more of like a retrospective aspect, and you might be wanting to look more at the previous week than looking at the upcoming week. And again, I would base that off of what your students are saying as far as if they've started yet or how far behind they are, things like that. So if no one's done the assignment, then you can always gauge it based on if they haven't even covered any of the lesson materials yet, then you may not want to jump into the assignment other than covering some of the concepts like, oh, okay, well, your assignment this week I notice is going to ask you to, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but build a function that includes a for loop, for example. So then let's talk about loops, and let's talk about the logic of a loop, and counting iterations and making sure that it's not a never-ending loop and things like that. So you'll want to cover concepts if nobody's done the assignment. If there's a huge gap in abilities or in student progress, that can be one of the bigger issues or the bigger struggles for most mentors. And there are a couple of ways that you can go about that. Some of our mentors have had students that have been on the higher ability level sort of split off and pair program or help within the session other students that might be a little bit further behind. You can also have students that might be behind and kind of anxious or nervous or not wanting to share their questions because of how far behind they are. They can always post them directly to you in the chat. And that way people don't have to know, and they don't have to feel whatever shame that might come with asking questions when everybody else is far ahead of them in the session. So feel free to let students know at the start of your session that they can chat directly to you if there are questions that they feel uncomfortable asking in front of group. So what if there are crickets? This is the most common question I get from mentors. And usually the way I recommend addressing that is have an idea or two sort of tucked in your back pocket of something interesting that you can show them that's related to coding, like, hey, check out this really cool, I don't know, rock, paper, scissors game or something that somebody built that I just saw. This is all something that you will be able to do by the time you're done learning your JavaScript foundations. So bringing in something that kind of not re-excites them, but gets them interested in it and gets them thinking bigger picture about what they can build with these week by week lessons that they're learning, other ways that they can use material. Or you can also just break the ice with like, anybody doing anything fun this weekend, that kind of a thing, and then just refocus them if they get off topic. How students submit their assignments. I can't remember why I had that as a note for our common issues. I think it's because before students were struggling with the process that we used because we had a different method that we were using for them submitting assignments. But It's just a very straightforward web form, so it should be pretty basic. If anybody has any questions or seems to be uncertain of how to turn in their assignment, then you can always direct them to me. We do have screenshots and instructions within their GitHub repo to be able to help outline, like, this is how you do a pull request, this is how you merge your pull request to main, this is how you submit your assignment. So they should have all of those resources available, but in case they run into any issues, then you can always send them my way. Does anybody want to share anything as far as like issues that they've had whenever they've been teaching groups, or other thoughts like that? So that way you can bring your experiences to the rest of the group as like, oh yeah, I ran into this problem and this is how we solved it, or anything along those lines.
Well, to me, in the beginning, a lot of the concepts were really, like you said, foreign. There's a lot of abstraction, especially if you use things like, arrow functions or shorthand, things. It just tends to make everything even worse. So my suggestion is not to use anything advanced until we're, somewhere within that understanding. I mean, I still struggle with a lot of different things that I don't understand, so I can't really use a lot of advanced concepts. But and the other thing is, because it's so abstract, I find myself desperately looking for real world applications. Why do I need this? Why is this so abstract? And a lot of the teachers where I used to go, where I started my boot camp, wouldn't provide that either. So it would continue to be something mysterious and very abstract to me, until I had mentors and I had other folks that kind of just put what you said, just real life concepts or real life applications for what you're doing, even if it's within an app or without an app, even if it's a programming concept or not. But a lot of people fail to grasp these concepts because they're so abstract and nobody gives them context and nobody gives them any kind of like real application for it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Rixia. I ran into that with some of the intro students this past round. They were just having such a hard time with, like, you call a function, you pass it arguments, what happens to those arguments that you've passed that function? And the example that I wound up using with one of the students is like, okay, your function is a store that provides a service like a hair salon, and the arguments that you pass it are the people that go into that hair salon. So they go into the function, they go into the hair salon, they do these things to their hair, and then they come out however you have it returned. So sometimes using like bizarre real world random examples that kind of go along with, here's the idea of what's happening here, can really help with getting it to click, especially with syntax, because it seems so odd to be like, oh wait, you're putting this here in parentheses, but then you're using it in code that you wrote higher up. And like sometimes even just the layout of how code is in a document is mind-blowing for them, or is like really hard to understand those abstractions like you were talking about. So yeah, that is excellent advice to give. Anybody else have anything else they want to share as far as experiences they've had with teaching other students in the past or anything? I'm going to keep on going with our slides real quick. So roles and expectations. So Code the Dream, we set up the curriculum, videos, assignments, supplemental materials, anything like that. We are in communication with you all and with students about timeline, when the class starts and stops, assignments, how they work through assignments, when they're due, how to turn them in, how to access their materials, all that kind of good stuff. We design and assess the practicums and final projects, as well as the curriculum and final projects, track student progress, and then determine which students are able to progress to the next course. So if at the end of the intro course, they can't demonstrate by the work that they've put into their final project that they're understanding those foundational concepts well enough, then we'll either ask them to look over certain areas that they need to strengthen before they can move on to an advanced class, or they have the opportunity to retake it. We are very flexible with what our student path is like. So it's not uncommon for a student to be like, look, life got really crazy. I just need to drop the class and retake it next round. And that's perfectly fine. So if you see students that are really struggling and are falling so far behind that it's going to be hard for them to catch up to stay on track, then please put them in touch with me, because I'm always there to be able to be like, okay, well, let's talk about what's going on and let's get a plan developed that works with your timeline or works with what's going on with your life, or, let you know what your other opportunities are so that you don't have to give up on this dream. So that's where we come in. Students are expected to do everything that students ought to. So cover their learning materials, complete their assignments, attend their sessions to get any questions answered. For students that are really advanced or are doing really well educating themselves with the lesson materials, it's okay if they miss a mentor session or if they opt not to go to mentor sessions for a week. Ideally, we like them to attend mentor sessions because it helps them get to know their other classmates. It helps them network with experienced developers, and you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes going to a mentor session helps sort of open your eyes to something that you wouldn't have thought about just covering the lesson materials on your own. But we also understand that some students are coming in at a more advanced level and kind of just need to spot check some areas before they're ready for the advanced classes. And we want to meet people where they're at educationally rather than shoehorning them into this particular schedule. And of course, all of our students, all of our mentors, we expect to be in a very supportive, encouraging, helpful environment, respectful interactions, professionalism, that kind of a thing. Students should plan to take about 15 to 20 hours a week on work to kind of give you an idea of how much time they're going to be putting in outside of mentor sessions. Would be, a good 10 to 15 hours outside of the mentor sessions that they'll be working on things. Agree with all the stories said. Sorry, I'm just reading Daniel's information in the chat too. Yes, yeah, JavaScript is pretty flexible. And I was noticing that too when I had mentored for intro a couple years ago, that students would write things and I had to kind of stop and think like, wait, does it work the way they wrote it? Because that's not the way that I would have approached it initially. And then, yeah, sometimes you wind up with things that are just frustrating errors, like they forgot to close a parentheses, they forgot to close a curly brace, they forgot to close a semicolon. Or put in a semicolon. So some of those like little nuance things are things that they just need to write the code a bunch of times and run into those errors before they kind of learn their lesson of, I need to make sure that I'm always closing what I open. And those are all very helpful things to point out and kind of alert them to keep an eye out for as they're working through their code. Thank you for putting that in there, Daniel. Okay, mentoring roles and expectations. So host a minimum of one 1 hour long mentor session per week, or for those of you that are by appointment only mentors, then just touch base with students as they reach out to you saying, hey, I need a tutor or I'd like some one-on-one time, and arrange a time to be able to meet with them. Complete your mentor session reporting form after every session, whether it's a one-on-one or not. Go ahead and fill that out so that way we know that students have been meeting with their mentors. Arrange for coverage or provide notice prior to the week's start day if you're unable to keep your regular session. So as I mentioned earlier, I'll send the spreadsheet out to you for the upcoming week. So Saturday, you'll get the sheet for the Wednesday to Tuesday week that's coming up. So you have from Saturday to Monday to revise that Wednesday to Tuesday week as you need to. And students get access to that on Monday. So if it's after Monday and before the week started and you have to change something for that upcoming week, then just let me know or communicate to your students, hey, I need to push my session back an hour or forward an hour, or I'm not going to be able to do it this week, or I need to do it on a different day this week. Just be in communication with either myself and or students to let them know if something's changing. Respond to questions posted in the class discussion channel or encourage students to work together to solve their problems. Communicate with us if there are any individual students that are falling behind or seem like they need specific help. And you're always welcome to share any kind of feedback, whether it's about student performance or about our program. We'll periodically be checking in with you just to kind of get an idea of, is your mentorship going well? Are there any pain points for you that we can make easier? Anything like that. So feel free to reach out either during those check-ins or outside of those check-ins. Feel free to let us know. So the checklist for you would be to do any kind of mentor session prep that you want, and that looks different for different people. Sometimes it means just looking over the learning concepts for the lesson or reviewing the assignment. Some mentors prefer to actually like full on do the assignment themselves. Some mentors just want to take a look at bits and pieces like, oh, it's been a while since I've encountered this particular concept and students are covering it this week. Let me refresh my memory on it. Show up for your mentor session or have properly notified students or staff or arranged for a substitute, and then fill out the mentor session report form. Optional things that you can do in preparation for your mentor session if you want to would be review any Treehouse videos or lesson material content, do the assignment yourself, reach out to your students in advance to ask them what questions do you have for my session this week, or are there things outside of what you're learning this week that you'd like to learn about that I should bring that information with me to my mentor session. Keep an eye on the Slack discussion channel if there are anything that you need help with answering questions. Offer additional one-on-one mentoring if you need or want to any students that might need a little extra hand. And just general helpful tips that we like to share is just be sure that you're being inclusive, judgment-free zone. Remember that a lot of folks are non-native English speakers, so rephrasing a student's question to make sure you're understanding what they're asking, or rephrasing your answer to a question or an explanation of something is helpful to make sure that there isn't any kind of communication barrier and that you're having a good open flow of comprehension between you. Let every student have a chance to be able to ask questions or share what they've done or share advice, that kind of a thing. Insider help as far as like resources or shortcuts. I feel like I'm forever sending students to W3 schools for like syntax references or as a reminder of these are all the methods that you can call on a particular array or anything like that. Using real life examples, we've talked about that already. Asking questions. Sometimes when you have silence in the room, then asking open-ended questions that aren't just like yes and no answers is very helpful with getting students talking. If you say, did you do the assignment? You're going to have yeses and nos. If you say, what was your favorite part about working on the assignment? Or can somebody tell me how they approached question 2, is going to give you a fuller answer and really kind of start helping move along some dialogue. There we go. And feel free to help each other out. One of the issues that we run into, especially around the GitHub weeks and Git weeks, are students that are working on a Mac, but their mentor was PC or vice versa. Yeah, exactly. Chuck understands. So if you run into an issue where a student's coming at you with a question and it's like, I don't know, I've never hit that error because I use a different machine or I have a different method of doing that. Then feel free to reach out to other mentors and be like, hey, the student's got this error. Has anybody else run into it? How did y'all solve it? And that's where the private mentors channel can be helpful too, that you're welcome to ask questions of each other. So the last little bit that I want to cover is emphasizing our culture. We're very much sort of family oriented in that once you become a part of this organization, you're really a part of our family. And we want it to be a very safe, open place that's welcoming to all. So we're very focused on discrimination-free, harassment-free. So all of our community members, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a staffer that's been here for forever, whether you're a student, whatever, we do not tolerate any kind of discriminatory or harassing behavior. While you are mentoring for us, then you are representative of us. So please reflect sort of our values and our culture within your sessions. If you're noticing any kind of harassment or discriminatory behavior, either students acting that way towards you, students acting that way towards each other, mentors acting that way towards students, anything along those lines, then please come to myself or Reed or Lori, so that way we can address the situation, get the full picture, and handle it the way it needs to be handled, so that way everybody can stay in this comfortable, welcoming culture that we work so hard to provide. We also like to cover just sort of like our standards of protocol for in case of emergencies. It's extremely rare that you will run into any kind of emergency when you are on a Zoom call with these students, because if somebody's not feeling well, they're just not gonna attend your session, obviously, or hopefully. But just in the event that anything does arise as an emergency while you are on the call, because stuff is still out there, maybe somebody starts having breathing difficulties, I don't know. The first priority is to call 911. And this is where it gets a little weird, because obviously you calling 911 for your region might not be applicable to the student's region for wherever they're living, because we do have students across 17 states. The reason we prioritize calling 911 is because even if your 911 center isn't where the student is or where the person having the emergency is, they can help direct you as far as like, keep talking to them to make sure that they stay conscious, or can you see if there's anybody else in the room with them that maybe they can go help support their head or turn their body, or whatever they need to do. So they'll be able to help sort of direct you in a way that will be most helpful for whoever's having an emergency. And then of course, contact Code the Dream staff. So Lucy Martinez is in charge of our operations. She's our Chief Operations Officer. And then Lori Kamal is our program director. So you can contact either of them by Slack or by text and let them know, I've got a student in my session that's having an emergency right now. We'll look up their emergency contact information, get on the phone with them, as well as locate what 911 region they're in and make emergency services aware in that student's region of what's going on. Questions about any kind of emergency situations, if you have any questions along those lines. Rixio had asked in the chat if there's a happy hour or socialization hour at Code the Dream. We don't have anything scheduled like that in place. With the most recent cohorts, we have started to have an outlet channel where it's just students and then like one mentor that's in there just to kind of help direct students or, put up an icebreaker or whatever kind of a thing. But we wanted to be able to have a students mostly / only space where they could be like, oh, this assignment really sucks this week, or they can just be very open and honest about their experience as a student. So that's the closest thing that we have to that currently, Rixio. We are starting Discord channels though, so that way students can reach out to each other that way too, and have a little bit more of a social aspect of, hey, I'm really into this particular game. Does one of my classmates want to hop on and game with me tonight or whatever? So we are trying to branch out the society part a little more. In general, sorry, going back to emergencies, in general, if you do have any kind of an emergency, either clearly direct somebody or clearly make it known, okay, I'm going to be calling 911 for this person having an emergency. Attend to the victim as you're able to. Obviously over Zoom, that's not very helpful, but talking to them reassuringly, asking permission before giving care. Again, that kind of is a little bit more when people are in person, but taking note of anything and kind of giving the person who's having an emergency any information that might help them feel better is helpful as well. Direct someone to or state that you will be contacting Code the Dream staff, so that way we can go along with helping get the person who's having an emergency what they need. And then just be sure to take note of specifics. So who was involved, what happened, when did it happen, where did it happen, how long did it last, things like that. So that way we can share that with emergency personnel if needed. If you feel that it's appropriate to have everybody hop off of Zoom except for the person having an emergency and one other person to kind of be a witness for you, then that's perfectly fine and acceptable to do as well. To say, can everybody hop off except for this person, and we'll make sure that they're taken care of, kind of a thing. Questions about emergencies at all? Good. Okay. All right. So resources and next steps. We're getting towards the end. I might actually make this by 8:15. Woohoo! Class websites, learn.codethedream.org. And I'll be sending you links to all of the resources that you need as far as like the class website, the class interface, mentor resources page, and like the mentor sign up sheets. And there's just a bunch of stuff that I put in the Slack channel and pinned to the Slack channel. So that way it's quick and easy for you to be able to find it and refer back to it if you need to. And I'll be emailing that to you all as well. So that way you have all of that information in a convenient location. But class websites / dashboards, mentor resources, Slack channels, Treehouse, Odin projects open source, so you don't need to have any kind of login or anything for that. But you can also bookmark it. We do have the particular sections that we're having in the order we're presenting them to students in the dashboard, in that Airtable interface dashboard for the Borr class. And then staff contacts. So you can reach me, there's my email. You can reach Reed. Lori's the program director. Tom Ra's our senior developer. So he's very familiar with what all the curriculum content is, and it can help answer any kind of technical questions if it's beyond what I'm able to help you with. Questions about resources or anything? Okay, so next steps, if you haven't yet, I don't think anybody that's on the call hasn't. I'm pretty sure everybody that's on has already taken care of this as far as completing the mentor sign up form saying, yep, sign me up for the intro May 2022 class. Um, I'll be sending out the invitations to the Slack workspace. If you're new to our organization, if you've already been with us before, then I'll just make sure that you're on the proper channels. You can take yourself out of channels. So if you have mentored with us in past classes and you don't really want to stay on there, we usually leave the class channels active, I think, for about 6 months at the end of class in case students are still communicating with each other or connecting. So you can excuse yourself from a channel that you've been assigned to if you have old class stuff on there and you don't want it cluttering up your Slack menu. You can check out the class website, learn.codethedream.org. Orange Asteroid is the one that's currently published that would give you an idea of what the Treehouse intro class content is going to be like. And I'll have the Bestla class, which is the Treehouse one, published by the weekend. And then check out mentor resources. I'll be sharing that password with you in the email that I send out. And then just bear with us and be very communicative with us as far as anything that you might need, questions you have, anything like that. We are here for you. All right, question and answer time. Feel free to unmute and say, hey, what about this, or anything like that.
Hey, I have a quick question. So regarding the sign up, I filled out the sign up form, and I believe that I may have just put in the React class and haven't selected the intro class. Do you want me to fill it out again and sort of
Oh,
select
no,
the
no,
intro
that's
class,
perfectly
or?
fine. I'll go ahead and
Okay.
pull it up real quick on mine, Oliver, and get that updated so that way I know, and so that way you have access to everything that you'll need to. Airtable. But thank you for double checking with me so that way I know. Were you preferring to do by appointment only, or you want to do just traditional mentoring? Where you have like a set hour that you meet with students at?
I think the traditional mentoring would probably be better.
Perfect. And then by this weekend, when I'm sending out the email with all the links and everything to everybody, if you are a by appointment only mentor, then you can disregard the spreadsheet that shows the days of the week for you to be able to sign up for a time. Oh, actually, yeah, let me show that real quick. Hold on. That was the other thing I wanted to show to kind of give you an idea for visuals. This is our main class's website. And obviously you can just select from the menu as far as what you want to take a look at. Orange Asteroid is the one that will give you an idea of what our current curriculum layout is and breakdown. The spreadsheets that we use are just Google spreadsheets. So you would put your name and the time in Eastern and Pacific time for when you'll be starting your session. So for example, if I was gonna, whoops. Oh, it's because I'm in incognito mode, sorry. So you would just plug in your name and the time that your session starts. Students know that the sessions are an hour, so you don't need to put the range, you can just put the start time. If it's easier for you, you can put down whatever your time zone is and I'll convert it to Eastern Pacific for you. So if you don't feel like changing hours, then just put down your time zone with your start time and I can edit it as needed. And then there'll be a new sheet for each week. So just be sure whenever you're editing your schedule to take a look at what the week is to make sure you're on the current or upcoming week to be able to adjust it as you need to. The dashboard for Borr is going to look like, oops, wrong one, is going to look like this. So the first landing page just lets you know this is the class. You can either take a look at the timeline where it shows you what the lesson is over the calendar, or you can take a look at the curriculum. And so the curriculum has a link for them to be able to submit their assignments. It gives a menu breakdown of what the classes are in order, start date for that week, learning objectives, and then they would click view lesson to be able to take a look at what the lesson materials are. And it takes them to whatever that particular topic is. So it just redirects them that way. And then their coding assignment, same thing. They can just click view assignment and it takes them to that particular Replit assignment or their GitHub assignment instructions, depending on what week they're on. and then mindset information's at the bottom. If they notice any typos, or if you notice any typos anywhere, then feel free to just put a comment in, so that way we can be aware that we need to fix something. The link to the mentor session sheet is going to be here as well. So it just kind of gives you a good visual as far as how it works. And we do have information. Once we know who the by appointment only mentors are going to be, then we can list your information here so that students know who to reach out to, that kind of a thing. And then the main GitHub repo is instructions and README. The biggest issue students tend to do is they push back to the Code the Dream School. We have them fork a copy of the repo, and then they should do all of their pushes back to their repo. So that way they're updating their main, and we're keeping this as a blank slate from class to class. So just be sure that that's something that you address when you're starting to cover Git basics in that 5th week. And then this is what their assignment submission form looks like, as far as they just pick their name out of the list, pick their class, which lesson they're submitting for. They'll fill in what their mindset response is. They'll put in their link to either their Replit or their GitHub. They'll also provide feedback as far as what mentors they met with, just in case we need to cross-reference. And then these are sort of the questions that we ask as far as like, did you cover all of your lesson materials? Were your lesson materials good, or were they too easy or too hard? Was the assignment too easy, too hard? How much time did you spend on it? Just sort of some metrics that help us tailor our class how we need to. All right. So that covers the bulk of it. What other questions are out there?
So you'll be sending that that email with all the links, and then we'll just reply if we have any questions.
Yep, absolutely.
Great.
So I'll send that out to everyone. I should have it before the weekend. Your Slack invite will come as a separate email because it comes through Slack. But then the email that I send out with like the recording of this meeting, links to all of the various resources that you need, and then all of those links that are in the email will also be in your Slack channel. It'll be pinned to your Slack channel, so that way you can find them easily and quickly there too. But yeah, if you think of questions that haven't come to mind during this session, but are things that you need or want to know before we get rolling on the 25th, then feel free to email me, and feel free to reply, or reach out if there's anything that I haven't covered, or I covered but you forgot, or anything like that. I'm here. All right.
And you say you needed, there's still time to get more mentors.
Yeah, we're pretty well set as far as numbers, but if there is anybody else that's interested in mentoring, colleagues or peers or coworkers or whatever, feel free to send them our way and just let them know that they need to let us know that they want to be mentoring or reviewing or by appointment only mentoring, whatever, for this upcoming May intro class. So that way we can make sure that we're following up quickly and getting them what they need before class starts.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.